Commanders hire Dan Quinn to match with their new general manager, Adam Peters, to lead this franchise into the future.
The way that we live is not for everybody, okay? It's not, all right? Because we're going to run and put our bodies on people in a violent manner.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the blues, we'll cover it all here. Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So at 8-5, the Commanders are in pretty good shape in terms of the postseason, but they still have a lot of work to do. That loss to Dallas a couple weeks ago still stings. If you were at 9-4 right now, you'd pretty much be a shoo-in to make the postseason at this point. But what's done is done. We can't change the past. All we can do is move forward, understanding the urgency that is necessary to make the postseason a reality. Now, we've been in this position before. We were just here 2 years ago when we were heading into a bye in week 14, 7-5-1, coming off the bye, home playoff, home date that felt like a playoff game against the Giants. You know, whoever won that game was going to have an over 90% chance to make the postseason. The loser, not so much. Obviously, we know what happened. Giants came in here, won, ended up making the playoffs, winning a road playoff game. Meanwhile, we lost to the Cleveland Browns. Our season was effectively ended there, and the rest is history. So we've been in a similar spot, right? We've been in a similar position before and didn't take care of business. So there are no guarantees here. But this is a different group. This is a different staff. This is a different quarterback, obviously. And this is a different team. And the vibe here is different, and I expect different. So with that said, as we're going to do customarily here now, from here on out to the end of the regular season, we're going to take a look at the playoff picture and where the Commanders sit and what needs to be done in order for them to make the postseason. So let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture, and it looks like this. Now, I alluded to this yesterday. If you're the Commanders, you need to brace yourself if you're going to get in as the 7 seed. Now, again, none of this is etched in stone. Packers play the Lions this week. They could lose that game, drop to 9-4, and then voila, you're one game behind the Packers for the 6th seed. However, you can't assume that anything's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how the Packers are going to finish out this season. And so we'll see what ultimately takes place. But if you want to avoid the two best teams in the conference, the Eagles and the Lions, you need to get out of that 7 seed. The first goal is to make the playoffs. You really don't care where you are, 7, 6, 5, doesn't matter. You just want in, right? But if you can get yourself positioned to get in, then you can start talking about where exactly you're positioned. Wouldn't you love to go get some revenge against a Seattle Seahawks team as a 6 seed? I feel like we're better than the Seahawks, to be honest with you. And I don't mind going to Seattle and getting a win against a team that has knocked us out of the postseason each of the last 2 times that we were in it, right? Well, sans for 20, I take that back. The Bucs got us in 2020 and the Packers got us in 15. The 2 times before that, the Seahawks were responsible for us being bounced from the postseason in 2012 and 07. And if I'm not mistaken, 05 as well, right? We went on the road in 05 and lost. They beat us in 07 with Todd Collins, and then they beat us in 2012 with Russell Wilson with the Robert Griffin III injury. So the 3 times before 15, they were responsible for bouncing us. I'd love to go to Seattle if they were to win that division. Really, it doesn't matter who the 3 seed is. I feel like we can beat them personally, whether it's Arizona, whether it's the Rams, whether it's the Seahawks. I like our chances against any of those teams. We're going to play the Falcons, but the Bucs, they're a different animal. I don't necessarily know if I want to play the Bucs, but we're not getting all the way to the 5 seed anyway. It's either 6 or 7 for us if we are to make the postseason. The NFC East feels sort of out of range at this point with the Eagles' schedule down the stretch. Can't see them losing any more than a game or 2 max, if that, right? So us losing to Dallas pretty much put a damper on us trying to win the NFC East, and then the Eagles going on the road and beating Baltimore pretty much put any conversation to rest, right? So you're just really focusing in on making the postseason. And right now, the Commanders sit at 8-5, as you can see. The important part to focus on is this right-hand column over here. These are the teams in the hunt. Now, before we even get to that, I just want you to focus in on something in particular. The Lions are 11-1. The Eagles are 10-2. The Vikings are 10-2. I want you to look in the right-hand corner. I know it's very small and the print is very faint, but I want you to focus in on that category that says playoff probability. Okay. And the good folks over at the NFL.com took the liberty of interjecting next gen stats to predict what the playoff probability is for each team as they currently sit, factoring in their record, their remaining schedule, and then the rest of the records of teams in the conference, so forth and so forth. So why this is interesting for me, because I've said all along that I think the magic number in the NFC is 10, okay? Which is why I was so frustrated with the Dallas loss, because you would literally be knocking on the door of 10 had you beaten the Cowboys like you were supposed to a week ago. You'd be sitting here at 9-4, and you'd all but be assured a playoff spot. But with that said, I wanted to take a look at this for a second, because I think this is further proof that 10 is probably the magic number in the conference. Why do I say that? Lions are 11-1. Their probability is 99%. They're going to make the playoffs. That's essentially what that means. The Eagles are 10-2. Their playoff probability, 99%. They're going to make the playoffs. Why? Because they're at 10 wins already, right? They're already at 10. Speaking of which, Vikings, their playoff probability, 99%. Why? Because they're at 10 wins already, right? I'll take it a step further. The Packers are 9-3. Their playoff probability is 97%. Their bar is almost fully loaded, right? Why is it that far? Because they're one game away from that magical number in the conference for me, which is 10. Now, our percentage dips all the way down to 71, which is really good, but it's not where we need it to be. We've got work to do. So again, to me, the magic number is 10. Can you win 2 out of your final 4 games to solidify a playoff spot? You got a great opportunity off the bye against New Orleans. That is the main focus. I don't want to talk about Philadelphia. I don't want to talk about Atlanta. I don't want to talk about Dallas in week 18. If you beat New Orleans, you're one step closer to being in the postseason. And that's what I'm aiming for. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But I just wanted to make that abundantly clear. 10 is the magic number. 10 is that number. So we can get into the 6 seed versus the 7 seed, what that means. I've already laid out for you that the likelihood is whomever wins the NFC South or North, because I think Tampa could get hot here. And if Tampa gets hot, they could, leapfrog not only the Falcons, but the Seahawks as the NFC West winner, and ultimately, be the 3 seed. And at that point, I mean, I'm not running from Tampa, but I'd rather play whoever wins the NFC West. I think all of us would agree that no one in that division scares us, right? You're not afraid of Seattle. We've already beaten Arizona, and you're not afraid of the Rams. At least I am. I'm not. I can't speak for you. So I'd rather play whomever wins that division more so than Philadelphia or Detroit or even Tampa if they were to come back and win that division. But again, we will see. Speaking of Tampa, they had a come-from-behind victory over Carolina, which was huge for them. If they had lost that game, they'd be in a rough position right now. But with that win, they've tied Atlanta for the lead in the NFC South. Now, the significance there is that the Falcons have swept the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year, own that season series. So in order for the Bucs to win that division, they would need to finish one game better than the Atlanta Falcons. So they've still got work to do. But the reason this is significant for the Commanders is because whomever doesn't win that division, if it's not Tampa Bay, right? If Tampa Bay doesn't win the division, if it's Atlanta, then Tampa Bay is the team you have to be worried about. And they own the season series over us. They beat us in week 1. So you don't want to finish tied with, say, a team like Tampa Bay. So that is significant. We still play Atlanta. So we still have a chance to kind of determine what's what there with them. But as far as the Bucks are concerned, we don't want any parts of finishing the season tied with them, having to determine a playoff spot with them because they beat us already. The Cardinals, same thing applies, but in the opposite direction. We've already beaten Arizona, so if they were to not win the division, it would be beneficial for us to just keep them on our hip. Don't let them pass us, because even if we were to finish tied with them, we'd own the tiebreaker. So we're in pretty good shape with Arizona. The Rams are 6-6. I just don't believe in the Rams. I'm sorry. I don't know what their remaining schedule is. I don't really care right now. It's not of any importance to me because there's still so many games left in the season. Most teams have 5 games left. And I think the Rams are going to fall apart. Not necessarily like completely implode and lose every single game, but they're not. The magic number is 10. I've already said that. The Rams aren't winning 4 out of their final 5 games. I don't know what their schedule looks like. I don't care what it looks like. I just don't see them winning 4 out of their final 5 games. So I'm not too concerned with them right now, but we could revisit that conversation 3-4 weeks down the road if they start to get hot somehow, but I just don't see that happening. I only included these last 2 teams because theoretically speaking, all right, for all intents and purposes, these 2 teams could get to 10 wins. They'd have to run the table, and they'd probably need an enormous amount of help. But both teams can still get to the magic number, which is 10, so I included them. But neither of these teams are playoff teams, and they're not going to make it in the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. But again, the 49ers, more so than the Cowboys, they still have a shot in their own division. They'd have to get hot, right? Does it seem like they're going to get hot? Doesn't feel like they're going to get hot. And also, they have a terrible record in their division. All right, they've already lost 3 games in their division. So even if they finish tied with, say, a Seattle or Arizona, the likelihood is one of those 2 teams will finish 4-2 in the division, which will give them the division crown over San Francisco. They kind of feel cooked at this point. Same with the Cowboys, right? They'd have to get tremendously hot, beat teams like Tampa and Philadelphia and Cincinnati down the stretch. And while they may beat a team like Cincinnati, they're not beating Philadelphia. They're not beating, I don't think, Tampa Bay. And we sure as hell aren't going to let them beat us in Week 18 if we need that game. So whether we need it or not, I don't want them beating us. They already got one up off us that they weren't supposed to get. So they're not running the table. You see their playoff probability at 4%. Those 2 teams aren't making it, but I just added them in here because they can still get to that magic number in the conference, which is 10. But as you can see, we're sitting pretty because Tampa Bay would need to win 4 out of their last 5 to get to 10. Same could be said for the Cardinals and the Rams. All of those teams, in order for them to get to 10, which is why 10 is the magic number, would need to get extremely hot and continue winning. Tampa Bay just won a game, so they would have to win 5 out of their final 6 to get, and they beat the Giants prior to this week, so they'd have to finish winners of 6 out of their final 7. Not impossible, right? And I'm pretty sure their schedule is very favorable. They just played Carolina. They played Carolina again. They played Dallas. I think they played the Raiders. They have a schedule that is very advantageous, but they got to go out and take care of business. They almost lost against Carolina. And division games, as we know firsthand, are not easy. No matter who you're playing, they're not easy. So, same thing with Arizona, same thing with the Rams. They want to catch us. They got to win 4 out of 5 to get to 10 wins. We just got to win 2 games to get to 10. And I feel like we can win 3 out of our final 4, right? But we got to go out and we got to execute and we got to take care of business. So we've got the upper hand on all these teams, but by no means are we in the clear. We got to keep winning games. We got to keep taking care of business. And the next opponent up is the New Orleans Saints, and that's who we got to take care of in Week 15. But we'll continue to monitor this situation. We'll come back. We'll do this again next week. It will be updated. Everyone would have played the same amount of games, and from that point forward, there will be no more bye weeks, and we'll be off and running, and we'll be down home stretch at that point. So we'll take a look at it again next week. But I just want to add this in before we move on to in other news. There's a big difference between the 6th seed and the 7th seed. I've already laid that out for you, and I've already talked about you know, we all asked for the opportunity to play the Lions. We wanted a piece of Ben Johnson. No, we don't. We don't want that. Not in the first round, we don't, right? I would love to play Philadelphia in the playoffs. Oh, I would love the opportunity. Not in the first round. I don't. I'd love to take on the Eagles in the divisional round. I'd love to take on the Lions in the divisional round. You damn right. Give me the best opportunity to advance past wild card weekend. Avoiding the top 2 seeds, the 2 best teams in the conference, is the best way to go about that practice. If you really want your best shot to advance to the divisional round, avoid the Lions and Eagles at all costs. Not that we can't beat either team, but you just want the best chance to win a playoff game. That's probably going to be playing the NFC West winner. Now, we can't dictate who's going to end up in that 6 hole, which is where the 3 seed, which is where we ultimately want to be, is in the 6th seed. We want to avoid the 7th seed like the plague if we can afford to, right? If at all possible, the 6th seed is where we want to be. Especially if it's the NFC West winner like it currently is. Because I like my chances against any of the teams in that division, whomever ultimately calls themselves NFC West champion. I like my chances against all of them. Hell, I think there's a really distinct possibility that we finish with a better record than whomever wins that division. Same thing with the NFC South. Really don't care which of those 2 teams. I'd like to avoid Tampa, but I'm not afraid of Tampa Bay. Felt like if we played them 3 weeks, later than when we played them, we would have beat them. They caught us at a perfect time when we were just figuring things out in week 1. I'd like to take a shot at them again because I think we can beat them. But I digress. A lot of football left to be played. The focus is New Orleans for me, right? And getting a step closer to trying to be a playoff team. Who would have thought that we'd be having this conversation before the season started? There were a few of you, but most of us were in the conversation of, hey, let's just make sure we got ourselves a franchise quarterback, and wherever the chips may fall, that's where they fall, and we'll be excited as long as this team finishes on a high note. But 7, 8 wins, if the ball bounces our way, maybe we can get to 9. I mean, we'll be disappointed if we don't get to 11, to be honest with you. We'll be disappointed if we don't get to 11. I will be. I shouldn't say we. I will be disappointed if we don't make it to 11. I will be. I'll still be excited if we make the playoffs at 10-7. But I'll be disappointed if you don't want this to come down to, week 18 and, tiebreaker here, this, that. If you don't want to worry about all that, get to 11. I can assure you, those three teams that I just talked about, Tampa Bay, Rams, Cardinals, I can assure you none of them are getting to 11 wins. I can assure you of that. They're not getting to 11. It's a stretch for them to get to 10. They're definitely not getting to 11. You get to 11, and you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. That would require you to beat Philadelphia in week 16 to get to 11 before week 18. You get to 10 before week 17, which means you beat Philadelphia. You're probably already clinching a playoff spot. And obviously, depending on what happens with the teams below us and what happens with them these next couple of weeks, you could be in the driver's seat. You could clinch a playoff spot because you're running out of the amount of games that are left. And if you find yourself up 3 games with 3 games left and you own the tiebreaker, well, guess what? They can't catch you. So we're getting to that point, which is why winning is paramount. On the road, at New Orleans, after the bye, we got to have it. It's not optional. Not optional. Just like this game against Tennessee was not optional. Had to have it. And this one against New Orleans is even bigger because it's in the conference. We got to have it. Got to. In other news, we're going to react to the news that the Commanders have hired a brand new team president. Mark Clouse. We'll talk about that here in a second. But before we do that, I do want to make mention of the Offensive Rookie of the Year and Head Coach of the Year conversation that we're going to have here in a bit. Joe Buck poured a little bit of fuel on that fire a bit, and I'm pretty sure he got crucified on social media. He made a mistake. I'm going to talk about it. I briefly talked about it last night on the Overtime show, but I'll talk about it again here. And we'll talk about Jaden's Offensive Rookie of the Year candidacy and where he sits. We had a chance to watch Bo Nix last night. I feel good about where we sit there as well, but we'll talk about that here in a second. But let's talk about the breaking news from the day. Reason why it did not elevate to lead story status for me is because team president that starts in January does nothing to impact the team this year. And furthermore, he's on the business side of things. You know, I'm not too keen on the business side of things. Like, that's a whole separate animal and entity for me. I'm so much focused on the football side of operations. That's what I care about because that affects the product on the field. What happens on the business side has very little to do with what happens on the football side. They're two separate entities that overlap very sparingly, right? Like, if you're fixated on the name and the stadium and all that stuff, then this is a big one for you. And I don't know how he's going to factor into all of that stuff as a newcomer getting into the mix. He'll probably be somewhat entrenched in that stadium conversation as they get him up to speed. But the name thing, if that's something that's a fight that you're all in on, then this guy makes a big difference for you. But again, I don't see any of that really coming to fruition. But let's talk about his background a little bit, what he brings to the table, and why this is a big get for the Commanders on the business side of things. Hiring brand new team president. Remember, they got rid of Jason Wright, and he is going to have his contract terminated at the end of this year. And so Clouse's contract, Mark Clouse, the new team president's contract, will start at the turn of the new year in January. So let's talk about the statement that was put out by the Washington Commanders via their website. It reads as follows. The Washington Commanders announced today that Mark Clouse has been named team president, overseeing all facets of the organization's business operations. Clouse joins the Commanders from the Campbell's Company, where he served as the president and chief executive officer, CEO, since 2019, overseeing a portfolio of iconic brands that include Campbell's, Goldfish, Rio's, Pepperidge Farm, and more. He will begin his role in late January. So this is a quote here from Josh Harris, the owner of the Washington Commanders, or the majority owner of the Washington Commanders. He says, in Mark, we have found a dynamic leader with a stellar track record of guiding organizations to excellence, building brands that connect deeply with consumers, and ultimately delivering best-in-class experiences and lasting memories. Josh Harris, managing partner, Washington Commanders. He goes on to say, Mark shares our commitment to using the power of the Commanders franchise to bring people together. As a military veteran and accomplished business builder, he has a proven ability to strengthen both organizations he leads and the communities he serves. I'm confident in Mark's dedication to building a championship caliber organization and to support football operations in our drive for excellence on the field. Closed quote. At Campbell's, Clouse has led a transformation that reshaped the company's strategy and portfolio to fuel growth. Under his leadership, Campbell's has built a high-performing culture with industry-leading employee engagement and delivered consistently strong business results while making a lasting impact on Campbell's communities. Clouse brings more than 30 years of leadership experience to the Commanders organization. After graduating from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, where he played on the basketball team, Clouse began his career in the U.S. Army, serving for 6.5 years as a helicopter pilot and rising to the rank of captain by the end of his service. Following his service, Clouse joined Kraft Foods, holding a variety of management positions over a 15-year stint with the company. Clouse was named president of North America at Mondelez in 2012, and later served as chief commercial officer, CCO, overseeing the company's commercial growth plan. He was then named CEO of Pinnacle Foods, driving significant growth for the company. In January of 2019, Clouse was named Campbell's president and CEO. Clouse had this quote and had this to say, quote, I am incredibly grateful to Josh Harris and the Washington Commanders ownership group for the opportunity to lead this iconic franchise into a new chapter of growth, said incoming president Mark Clouse. He continues to say, the Commanders' passionate fan base, which has stood by this team for decades, deserves nothing less than our unwavering commitment to excellence. I look forward to supporting ownership as well as Adam Peters and Dan Quinn in doing everything in our power to build a championship caliber organization. Closed quote. Clouse and his wife, Kathy, are the proud parents of two sons, Spencer and Logan. So that was provided via the team website. So that gives you a little window into who Mark Clouse is, where he came from, what his background is, and what he will be tasked with doing. Again, he's going to be on the business side of this operation. So again, when you think about things like ticket sales, season tickets, when you think about the name, when you think about marketing, when you think about the stadium, these are all things on the business side of the operations. Again, how much will he be in the stadium conversation? Don't know, because he's getting here late. I know a lot of the conversations surrounding that are going to be handled by more of the ownership group, Mark Ein and Josh Harris and guys like that. That thing's turning political, right? The whole stadium thing. I'm staying out of it. Anytime something takes a political turn, I don't want any parts of it. Just figure it out. I'm at the point now where once you figure it out, let me know, and then I'll jump in, right? But it's a lot of jargon going on where, you know, they're using different places and things as bargaining chips. Hey, we want this. If you want this to happen, then you need to give us this. Yeah, that's not what I'm here for. Just let me know when it's done, right? But now you have someone to blame when things don't go well on the business side. You guys loved beating up Jason Wright like a piñata when things didn't go well. So now you have a new name that you can beat up on if things don't go well on the business side. So there you have it. Mark Clouse will take over as the new team president in late January. So Offensive Rookie of the Year and Coach of the Year honors will be decided later on, or really next year, early next year before the Super Bowl, but it's a regular season award. So down the stretch, those two awards will pretty much be decided here in these final 5 weeks of the season or so. Now, there's already a body of work that exists for both Jaden Daniels in the Offensive Rookie of the Year conversation and Coach of the Year with head coach Dan Quinn. Now, I will say this. Dan Quinn feels like a long shot. And I said this on Friday's show. He could get back into the conversation with a strong finish. Meaning, if we were to run the table, end up at 12-5, 12-5 probably gets you the 6 seed, maybe the 5, depending on how Minnesota and Green Bay finish up the season. But the likelihood is it'll get you the 6 seed, more likely than not. It might even get you just the 7, right? Green Bay could still finish up, 12-5, 13-4, and box us out and keep us at the 7 seed, whatever the case may be. Quinn was a great story when the team was 7-2, but his stock has cooled off considerably after the 3-game skid. Had we been sitting at 10-2 right now, or 9-3, 10-3 right now, or 11-2, you could make a case that he'd be the front runner right now for the award. But that's not where we sit. We're 8-5, and I think other coaches from teams who have had more success have surpassed him. But Joe Buck ruffled some feathers last night on the Monday night telecast when he misspoke. And see, I have a little bit more grace than most Commanders fans in this situation. Commanders fans were livid last night. I was on the overtime stream and people were really in their feelings, and I don't blame them, right? Because he was out of pocket. He totally ignored the Commanders. And really, I don't think he ignored them at the very beginning of his statement. I think he simply made a mistake and forgot. And the reason why I have a little bit more grace for him is because I've done it a million times. When you're sitting in that seat and you're making a statement and you forget, which is why I don't like being put on the spot a lot of times. When people ask me to make a list of the best this or that, I'm like, man, it's tough because when you're on the spot, it's easy for you to forget a name or two. And people are like, how did you forget this? And you're like, oh, damn, I did forget that. You know, I got to go reconfigure the list. So it's tough because, you know, your brain's working and it's easy to forget something in the moment. And, you know, he was more so trying to talk up Sean Payton and the job that he's done in Denver, which is a spectacular job. Who thought the Denver Broncos with Bo Nix would be sitting there at 8-5 with a chance to make the postseason? Nobody, right? Same could be said for the Commanders, though. And so Joe Buck goes on this, you know, short little tirade, right? That tirade's not the right word. He goes on this short little monologue, right? Which I guess is a oxymoron because a monologue is long. So I don't know if you can have a short monologue, but that's what we're going with. And he's talking about, you know, how, you know, you look at all these other coaches and he rattles off about 5 or 6 coaches on teams that are having success this year. And he's like, but none of them are doing it with a rookie quarterback. He's the only guy having success like this with a rookie quarterback. And everybody's like, I know my ears perked up. Doop, 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 doop. Wait, what? Did you forget about Dan Quinn and what he's doing in Washington with a rookie quarterback? And then somebody got in his ear because he forgot. He made a mistake. It happens. I've had that happen to me a million times, and people in the comment section jump all over me, and I'm like, oh, my fault. I did forget about that. My bad, right? So here's what made it bad, right? Here's what exacerbated the problem for me, which is why I'm like, yeah, y'all jump all over him. He deserves it. Is because after his producer probably got in his ear and said, hey, don't forget about Dan Quinn. He's got a rookie quarterback in Washington. He says, no disrespect to Dan Quinn and the Washington Commanders, but nobody else is doing it with a rookie quarterback. I'm like, wait. You just got corrected and you're doubling down on your foolishness? Why is what Dan Quinn is doing with a lesser roster, with a first-year staff, and a rookie quarterback, why is that not more impressive? Enlighten me. Because Sean Payton has been in Denver for how long? 2 years, right? So he's had a chance to settle in. His staff has been there for 2 years. They've had a chance to settle in. They've got a much more talented roster than the Commanders do, right? The only thing that I was willing to give Joe Buck grace on is who was expected more out of in terms of the quarterbacks, the rookie quarterbacks? The number 2 overall pick who won the Heisman Trophy, or the number 12 overall pick who, you know, was an afterthought? And that I will give him. Nobody thought Bo Nix was going to be in the offensive rookie of the year conversation. Still, Broncos have a better roster. That's year 2 of their program. He shouldn't be ahead of Dan Quinn. I'll just say that. But neither one of them are winning a damn award, personally. I still think this is Kevin O'Connell's award to lose, who had Sam Darnold on their bingo card, leading the Vikings to a potential, you know, number 1 overall seed. That's not out of the realm of possibility. They could still be the number 1 seed in the NFC, in the Minnesota Vikings. So who had that on their bingo card? None of us did. So I think it's his award to lose. But you know whose award it isn't? Or you know who else? It's their award to lose? Jaden Daniels, in the offensive rookie of the year. I do think it's his award to lose. And it got tight. The play over that, you know, really those 2 games against Philadelphia and Dallas. Because the Pittsburgh game, while it wasn't his best, it wasn't his worst performance. It was at that time, right? And that's saying a lot. If a game in which you help your team score 27 points and left probably another 14 out there is your worst performance, then you've set a pretty high bar for yourself, which he had. But then the Eagles game happened. That was his worst game of the season. to me. And then the Dallas game came, and I think that was just our worst game as a team. Like, we were awful in that game as a team, collectively. I thought him individually, I thought his worst game was against Philadelphia. So you look at where we are now, and I talked about this on Friday, like Jaden had an opportunity to reestablish momentum in that offensive rookie of the year conversation, starting with Tennessee. And I thought he did that. 4 total touchdowns, 3 passing through the air, career high, added a 4th touchdown on the ground, did have the 1 interception, but that's okay. Those happen. He's a rookie. Still only has 5 interceptions thrown on the season, if I'm not mistaken. The 3 touchdown passes did wonders for him because it put him in a different category. Like, Bo Nix was dwarfing him in pass touchdowns. And I thought Jaden had a much bigger lead in rushing touchdowns. Bo Nix has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. Jaden has 6. So I thought there was a bigger gap there in total touchdowns. There isn't. So those 3 touchdown passes, and then we watched Bo Nix on Monday Night Football throw 1 touchdown pass, but threw 2 interceptions. So his interception total, which had cooled off considerably because at the beginning of the season, man, 4 interceptions in the first 2 weeks. Then over the next 10 weeks or so, 11 weeks, he had 2 interceptions and like 16 touchdown passes, because I think he was 16 over 6 heading into last night's game. He threw 2 interceptions, added a touchdown. I think Jaden is at 15, or I think he's at 15-5 or something like that, 14-5. Let's see where he is overall. See where he is overall. Jaden Daniels stats. 15-6. So, and he's almost at 3,000 yards passing. Let's see if we can get a bigger picture of what he's done this season. I want completion percentage, all of that stuff. So this year, he is at almost 70% completion percentage, 69.6. 2,819 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and then he's added 6 touchdowns on the ground, 590 yards there. So he won't hit 1,000 yards rushing unless he has some crazy game or a couple of crazy games down the stretch. But he will end up with somewhere in that 850 range when it's all said and done, you'd like to think. So that is where he is right now, and I like where he sits. Meanwhile, Bo Nix, we watched him last night, and I thought he actually didn't play that bad. I thought he actually played solidly last night. I thought he made some really reckless decisions, but he didn't pay for them. So as long as you can get away with it, it's all good. So Bo Nix, on the other hand, is completing 63.8. So he's not even close to Jaden in completion percentage. Jaden is almost at 70. He's closer to 60 than he is 70. But he's at 63.8. He's got 17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 2,842 yards. So they're pretty much in the same space from a yardage standpoint. And keep in mind that Bo Nix has played in an extra game than Jaden. Both of them and their teams have played 13 games, but Jaden missed a game. So also keep that in mind when you're talking about Jaden. Jaden started 13 games, but he really only played in 12 because he played the first possession versus Carolina and then missed the rest of the game. So there's that. He's got 304 yards rushing, nothing to sneeze at, right? But he's still a full 200, almost 300 yards behind Jaden's total there. And he's got 4 rush touchdowns, which was a little bit more than I thought he had. I thought he was like at 2. And I thought Jaden was more like at 7 or 8. Jaden's at 6, Bo's at 4. So he's not that far behind Jaden in that category. And I have to throw this in there. Bo Nix has caught a touchdown pass as well. So he scored or accounted for a touchdown in 3 different manners: passing, rushing, and receiving, something Jaden does not lay claim to as well. So that's something else to keep in mind. But, you know, he's got 2 more passing touchdowns than Jaden, 2 more interceptions than Jaden on the season. So something else to keep in mind. But the records are similar, and I think that may also play a factor into who wins, who finishes up the strongest down the stretch, which then leads me to the remaining schedule for the Broncos. I think their schedule isn't, you know, a pushover, but I don't think it's the toughest schedule either when it's all said and done. And that may give him an opportunity to not only hang in this competition, but ultimately win it. I still think it's Jaden's award. And as long as he continues to do what he did on Sunday, he's going to win that award. He's still the odds-on favorite. Whatever book you want to check the odds on, he's still the favorite. But the distance has closed considerably. The Broncos' remaining schedule looks as follows. They come off the bye because they're on a week 13 bye or 14 bye, just like us. And they are at home for Indy. Then they have the Chargers on the road, the Bengals on the road, and then they finish up at home versus the Chiefs. So he'll see 2 really good defenses in Denver or the Chargers and the Chiefs. The Bengals are awful on defense, and he could carve them up. And the Colts, they're iffy defensively. You don't really know what Colts defense is going to show up, but he should be able to take care of business there. So this thing could come down to the wire, but my money's on JD5 pulling it out at the end and continuing to show the rest of the NFL why he's been the best rookie quarterback in the 2024 draft class. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys all throughout the week. Enjoy this bye week. I know I'm going to enjoy it. We will watch film either tomorrow or Thursday. There's no rush, right? Because there's no extra new content coming out to kind of push the envelope and make this game irrelevant, right? So we got time. Whether it's Wednesday or Thursday, we'll figure out a good space for it. But we will watch the film as the mob. And I will be live tomorrow night for Commanders Nightly News live. So we'll keep the schedule relatively intact. And more likely than not, you will either get an upload or a live stream from the Commanders Kings on Tuesday night. So be on the lookout for that as well. But feels good to be on this bye. I'm not going to lie. And it feels even better to get onto the bye with a win. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. See you next time.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.